Intro music to DiannAbroad.com podcast is Raphael Javidov. He wrote that jazz and fusion piece for me in 2008, 2009 maybe. He's a child prodigy, lives in Baltimore now. He's from Russia. Raphael Javidov. Diane Schindler here from DiannAbroad.com. You can email me at Diann, DIANN, at DiannAbroad.com. This is the second podcast. It's entitled Confessions and Quito. I thought I was going to have one confession, and as I began preparing this podcast, I realized I have at least three, so you should hang on to hear that. I'm in Quito, Ecuador. My very first podcast was a few weeks ago, and I promised you at that first podcast the second podcast would be my interviewing Constance of Lahulas, my bestie, who lives in Asheville, North Carolina. Well, I confess we failed. As hard as we tried, Constance and I, as hard as we tried, we had technical difficulties and ran out of time. Bummer. So that is postponed. That's my first confession. So forgive me. I'm in Quito, Ecuador. I've been here 5-6 days. I flew from Charlotte to Quito, $280 JetBlue. What a great price. And so this podcast, a couple more confessions, and then some facts about Quito, and a couple anecdotal experiences before we end this podcast. Here's the second confession. When I reserved my room in Quito, I must have been drinking vino tinto because it's a hostel, and I didn't know it was a hostel. I knew it was a single room and a private bath, and it was in downtown, that is to say, it was in historic Quito. But when I went to the airport and the shuttle service for the hostel picked me up, I didn't know it was a hostel until they pulled up to the door, and there it said, La Rosata, I always do this long, La Rosario Hostel. I thought, oh my God, what have I done? So I went in, and you know about hostels, like I know about hostels. They're places for people who can't afford anything, and they're usually young kids backpacking. Maybe there's some drugs. Maybe there's some marijuana. Well, that's not so bad. But yeah, maybe there's some drugs. Maybe there's some marijuana. But it's really kind of, a dormitory thing. Well, I knew I had a single room and a bath, so it wasn't going to be that. Anyway, I'm here to tell you about La Rosario. It is the cleanest hotel I have ever stayed in my entire life, and the cleanest in the last year. I've been in 21 different countries in the last year. You can look in the corner, every corner and nook and cranny in this hotel, and not find a speck of dust. There is maid service, daily maid service. The maids wear white uniforms, and they are cleaning every room. I have daily maid service. I have hot water. The bed is perfect. The linens are perfect. The lighting is actually pretty bright, and not so much in Europe. It's a small room, but it has what my first mother-in-law, my former mother-in-law, called a chifforobe. It's got a little desk. It's got windows, and maid service every single day. It has a kitchen. Self-serve kitchen downstairs, open 24 hours. Laundry service. You get your laundry back in 2 hours, and it's $2. You can practically see your image in the tile floor, and they have a buffer to buff the tile floors every week. There are bouquets of fresh roses throughout the hostel. At the front desk, they were pink. In the hall, they were orange. Up near my room, they were fuchsia. I'm just so impressed with this hostel, and it's $18 a night. Boom, shakalaka, $18 a night. When I arrived, Christian greeted me. He was wonderful. He carried my luggage upstairs, and then the next morning he said, I want to eat, and he said, let me call. Here's a place I think you should go. It's 3 blocks away. And I had a beautiful breakfast, and so I can't say enough about my hostel. So I liked it so much that I decided to extend my stay, but I'll tell you more about that. So that's my second confession. I'm staying in a hostel. Oh my gosh. So let me tell you a little bit about Quito. Quito is the some facts for you. Forgive me, but it's important to know if you come to Ecuador, you don't need a visa if you're a U.S. citizen, but you can come for 90 days. Full length of time, 90 days. I read somewhere online that when you arrive, you need to demonstrate that you are, with some evidence, for example, a flight, record of a purchased flight that you're leaving Ecuador before 90 days. And gosh, I kind of panicked because I didn't remember reading that until I'm standing in the line of security. Well, here's the good news. They didn't ask me to demonstrate that I would be leaving Quito. You're a U.S. citizen, you only have 90 days in Quito, in Ecuador. It's probably the same for each country in South America. The U.S. dollar is the currency. Spanish is the language. It is, the outlets are just like American USA outlets, like electrical outlets. And it's 9,400 feet above sea level. And I'm here at the rainy season, so I had this notion that this was going to be like Seattle in February. In Seattle in February, it's a monsoon. It's overcast. It's dark. It's dreary. It's wet. It's really, really bad. And so with the idea of being 9,400 feet up, I would probably get altitude sickness. Also, because of the wet season, I thought I'd be depressed. So I decided just to stay here 6 days at first, and probably 2 days of just getting used to the altitude. Well, that didn't happen. I mean, I am kind of out of breath. I might be out of breath just sitting here on my bed in my hostel room. Certainly, you have to be careful when you walk. You just have to take your time. But I really haven't felt sick. Just a little bit of shortness of breath every once in a while, and it's only been 5 days. It's 9,400 feet up. The population of Quito is 2.7 million. It's the historical center of the city where I am staying is the least altered and the best preserved historical area in all of South America. The climate is described as fairly constant and cool. Constant because we're on the equator. So you're going to have same light as the same darkness and the same temperature. The average temperature at noon throughout the year is 66 degrees. At night throughout the year is 49 degrees. Only 2 seasons, wet and dry. Won't you know, I came here during the wet season. Now, of course, that's why the flight was $280 from Chicago, I'm sure. One way, JetBlue, $280 to Quito. But let me be clear. It's beautiful. It's been beautiful. It's been partly sunny, and a little overcast occasionally. No rain. Well, rained 1 hour one day. And yes, it was a downpour, but it was only an hour. I ducked into a little ice cream parlor. That was not so bad. I brought raincoats, rain hats. I brought boots. I brought sweaters. Oh my gosh, I brought all this winter stuff, and it's really, I haven't had to use it. Actually, I just stuffed it in my little special backpack that Constance Vlahoulis insisted that I buy in Charlotte, which turned out to be a good suggestion. So I've used it every day. So it's beautiful weather. So now go back to the notion of the hostel. Go back to the notion of 9,400 feet up, thinking I was going to get altitude sickness, and the weather was going to be too much for me. Well, I was wrong. Confession. And so I extended my day. I extended my stay for another week because the weather is beautiful. The hostel is lovely. The people are just great. Very little English, but we're working through it. My Spanish is coming back a little bit. It's a beautiful area. Reminds me a little bit of about like a larger Madeira Island, Portugal, which is off the mainland in Portugal. Um, it's and Madeira Island is in the Azores. It's a volcanic island. Actually, it's only like 35 miles long, but all along the mountains and the volcanoes, the sides of the volcanic mountains are it's plastered with houses, beautiful pink and yellow and green houses, and that's the same thing here, plastered with houses. But there are volcanoes all the way around. But Quito is much larger, of course, than Madeira Island. Frankly, I don't know the square footage or the square mileage or the meters, so forgive me for that. So there you have my confessions, and there you have some information about Quito. Well, let me tell you that when I asked about directions at front desk, and Christian was fabulous, and he showed me a map. He drew on the map. He marked the map with markers to show me how to get to the basilica. The basilica was fabulous. The basilica is like 3/4 of a mile. He also told me about an area that is an artisan's market, and it's a non-touristy artisan area. It's about a mile and 2 miles from here. I will walk there tomorrow. But yesterday, I decided to go to other markets. I got my raincoat, my rain hat, my umbrella, and my camera, and my trusty GPS, and I put my camera in such a way that it wouldn't be visible. I put my money in a little money belt underneath my sweater, and I started walking. I saw few, if any, Americans or Canadians or non Ecuadorians, and it was Saturday, so I was in the midst of a lot of people, and it was a beautiful day. So I had to take off my hat, had to take off my sweater, had to take off my raincoat, and I never used my umbrella. So I walked through that area, and my goal was to get to the Virgin of Quito. The Virgin of Quito is a 135-foot tall statue, and it's 9,900 feet above sea level. This is like 94 down here, 94, 95 down in Quito, but this is more, obviously. So I'm walking and I'm walking and I'm walking, and I get to the stairs. The stairs going straight up to the Virgin of Quito. And it's like 400 feet. 400 feet. And that's not so bad, but it's all steps. Steps. I was trying to figure out I think there are like 900 steps to the Washington Monument. I'll have to look that up. But I think there are more than 900 steps. So I pack everything away in my little backpack, get out my water, and I begin. Every 15 or 20 steps, I had to stop. I had to stop and catch my breath. Got a little dizzy too. So, and that's not a bad thing as long as I was careful. Drank a lot of water. I get almost all the way up, and I ran into these 3 lovely tourist police who were gracious, wanted to know who I was and where I was from, and they wanted to know where I was staying, and was I a solo traveler, and I said yes, 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 and they said be careful of your camera. They said it's safe here and it's safe there, and they pointed out some places, but be careful of your camera. And we had a nice discussion, and then I walked a little farther up steps to the Virgin of Quito statue. And she's beautiful. She's absolutely beautiful. And I turned around and look, and I could see all of Quito. All of Quito. It was like a panorama. Go to my website in DiannAbroad.com, and you can see the pictures that I took yesterday. Words will not do it justice, and of course, my photos probably won't either. But I could see the basilica from the top, and I knew where I was heading. Meantime, my my GPS on my phone. My phone died. My phone died, so I didn't have GPS. But when I was talking to the policeman, they said, "Where are you staying?" And I said, "Oh, I'm right there near the basilica," and I could see it way off from the statue area. And they said, "Just take Venezuela Avenue," which was good to know because I don't know, I was going to get down there and get confused. Walked down, and the place was teeming with people. It was a Saturday afternoon. It was just teeming. You could, duck in to little, it's like in Spain or Lisbon. You just walk along and suddenly you see a door opening. I mean, there's a kind of a open door that you can't see. It's kind of hidden behind, and that doesn't make sense. In other words, you just don't know when there's a bakery or a pastry or a restaurant or a little vegetable stand or a little, what we might think is a tiny 7-Eleven where you can get cigarettes and soda and agua and candy. And then, of course, there are little bars all along the way, too. But I ran into a section that was a leather area, so there were leather shops all around. I ducked my head into one. I decided I needed... So this is the anecdotal part of this podcast. And I'm out of breath. Can you hear it? I'm just sitting on my bed, out of breath. But I wanted a strap for my camera, so I ducked into this little leather shop, and there were two women and a little girl. It was Stefan, Jessica, and Isa. I think her name was Isa. Isa was 3 years old. And I think Stefan and Jessica were sisters. So they didn't speak much English, but I could point to my camera strap and say I wanted a camera strap, and they said, un momento. And a few minutes later, Eduardo shows up. He mentions I should go upstairs, motions that I should go upstairs with him, and we go upstairs. And there's all this leather all over the place, and his sewing machines. I noticed 3 guitars in the corner of the room, but piqued my interest, of course, but I didn't say anything at that point. So we stood over this big old wooden table and began the best we could with my broken Spanish and his pretty good English, trying to figure out how long this strap was going to be, what color, what thread, how wide it was going to be, how it was going to be attached to my camera, and so on. So we did all that business kind of thing. We agreed. He said $40, which was high. I said 35. He said, okay. That was probably still high, but I'd already invested the time, and I was having a good time, so I thought, since breakfast was $2.50 and it's $18 a night at the hostel, I could afford to give him the money that he's worthy of having for creating right then and there and making for me right then and there a guitar strap. Well, so now he's working on the guitar. Isa is sitting there talking to her mother, Jessica. And I said, guitarra. And he said, sí, guitarra. And he took me over, sat me down, handed me a guitar and said, please, 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 por favor, por favor. So this guitar was rugged. It had been through a lot. It's all banged up. Dirty, frankly, it was dirty. The fretboard on it was a classical guitar. And for those of you in the listening audience who know guitars, a classical guitar is a little wider fretboard. I have small hands. My guitar is not classical. So it's a wider fretboard. I know I'm going to have trouble playing it. And the strings are nylon strings and notoriously difficult to maintain their pitch. And, it just gets out of tune. Plus, the strings needed replacing. So those are all my excuses. So I tuned it up and worked hard. The action was a little high. The strings a little bit away from the fretboard for me, and so that was a little challenge too. But I was determined. And if you know me, somebody says, Diane, would you like to play guitar? Do you think I'm going to be shy? Well, no, I'm right out there. And, it doesn't matter if I'm not good because I have passion. At least that's what I say to myself. So I tune up this guitar. He's working on my strap. and Jessica and Isa are sitting up there sort of watching, and I played Blackbird and the Beatles' Blackbird, and now I'm doing Carole King, It's Too Late, Baby. You know, it's too late, baby, now it's too late. Da 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 da. Well, Eduardo comes around and he says, "Bravo, bravo." And he hooks my guitar up to the amplifier and he puts a microphone stand with a microphone right at my mouth. So I keep playing. And I play, I continue on with It's Too Late, Baby. I play, what's that tune by the Beatles? It's In My Life by the Beatles. And also Joan Baez, Diamonds and Rust. Frankly, that's all I could remember without music. And so that was lovely, and I had fun with that. And then now the strap is done. I put the guitar back, and I pay up, and it's time to leave. And he says, "No, no, no," and he has me sit, and he calls down to Stefan downstairs. This beautiful young woman, looks about her mid-30s, got black hair, beautiful black hair, big black eyes. She had a red lace dress on. She comes upstairs. He hands her the microphone. He sits down and starts to play the classical guitar. Now, truly, I mentioned how tough that guitar is. He was an okay player. He was kind of a mediocre player. I mean, I wasn't good as him, but he was a mediocre player. It's not about competition. Well, maybe it is, but I'm about to tell you this part of the story. So he plays this lovely intro, and she begins to sing. She was magnificent, strong voice, beautiful enunciation of this Spanish traditional, it seemed like traditional romantic song. And I thought, what was I doing playing It's Too Late, Baby by Carole King? What was I thinking? Loco, Diane, loco, stupido. And come to find out, she's a professional. She showed me her CD. She said, "You must," somehow she said in Spanish, "let's be friends on Facebook." She gave me her card. We laughed about it. I said, "Oh, I'm terrible, malo, 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 bad, bad, bad." And they said, "No, no, no." And we sort of sang together, and they asked me to sing a Spanish song. I don't know. I know nothing. So I didn't do that, but I danced with Isa. Took some pictures of Isa. They took pictures of me. And it was just a lovely afternoon. And, that was beautiful. Really beautiful. It's all about the people. I love where I'm going. I love what I'm seeing. But it's always about the people, about connecting with people. It's so easy. That's the gift of travel. This is Diane from DiannAbroad. This podcast went over a few minutes, so I apologize for that. I'll try to cut it back the next time. You can reach me at DiannAbroad.com. That's DIANN. I'm getting my music here, my exit music. And please write to me. And go to my website, DiannAbroad.com, and you can see pictures of Quito. And remember, this is just my first 5 days in Quito, so that's the waiver. It's not going to be, there's lots of the things that I don't know about Quito. So I'm doing what I can with what I with what I know. On the 13th, I'm going to Lima, Peru. I'll be in Lima, Peru for 2 weeks. Another week here, and then 2 weeks in Lima. What a life, huh? What a life. That's what I say. Thank you so much. See you on the podcast.